This is BBC One in the North East and Cumbria. Now, the BBC News with Sophie Rayworth and Alison Freeman at 6 o'clock.
At 6, all change at Westminster as MPs return to Parliament for the first time since the general election.
Order, order.
Swapping places, Sir Keir Starmer addresses the Commons as Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak, now Leader of the Opposition.
We have the opportunity and the responsibility to put an end to a politics that has too often seemed self-serving and self-obsessed.
Now we will take up the crucial role of His Majesty's official opposition, professionally, effectively and humbly.
The Prime Minister is now on his way to Washington, where world leaders are gathering for a NATO summit. All eyes will be on President Biden. The 81-year-old is under growing pressure to step aside ahead of the presidential election. Also tonight, jailed for 17 years, the drunk driver who killed a baby boy and his aunt in a car crash on the A1. The manufacturer Dyson says it's cutting around 1,000 jobs in the UK as part of a major restructure. And some parts of the UK have had a month's worth of rain already, and we're only 9 days into July.
On Look North at 6:30, a man's jailed for 17 years over the death of a woman and her baby nephew. And a fifth of care homes in our region are inadequate or requiring improvement.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. Sir Keir Starmer has addressed MPs in Parliament for the first time as Prime Minister. Surrounded by Labour MPs on the government benches for the first time in 14 years, he said it was time to turn the page and unite in a common endeavour of national renewal. Opposite him was Rishi Sunak, now Leader of the Opposition, who congratulated the Prime Minister on his victory. The process of swearing in more than 600 MPs is now underway. Our Deputy Political Editor, Vicky Young, joins us from Westminster, and it was a rather different tone today.
Yes, it was, Sophie. A change in tone, that robust political debate set aside, well, for one day. I'm sure it won't last very long, but a change too in personnel. There are lots of very happy-looking Labour and Liberal Democrat MPs. They also look a little bit lost as they find their way around Parliament for the first time. And for the Conservatives, a very different experience. Their ranks are vastly depleted. 175 of them have lost their seats.
This hasn't happened for a while. A Labour Prime Minister entering the Commons after a landslide election victory. It was standing room only for all the new MPs on the government side, happily breaking the rule that they shouldn't clap in the chamber. Then it was back to tradition, Black Rod kicking off the ceremonial side of the day. Nothing can happen in the Commons without a speaker, so Sir Lindsay Hoyle was re-elected and another ancient convention dragged to the chair by MPs.
I now call the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer.
The bad-tempered election debates are over. This was a more reflective moment.
Service is a precondition for hope and trust, and the need to restore trust should weigh heavily on every member here, new and returning alike. We all have a duty to show that politics can be a force for good.
For one former Prime Minister, a different title to get used to.
I now call the Leader of the Opposition, Rishi Sunak.
It is important that after 14 years in government, the Conservative Party rebuilds. So now we will take up the crucial role of His Majesty's official opposition, professionally, effectively and humbly.
For the longest-serving female MP, this was a chance to highlight the changing face of the Commons.
When I was a new member in 1987, there were only 40 female members of Parliament. Today we have 264. And some of us are glad that we have lived to see this.
With fewer Conservative MPs, other parties will have a louder voice.
The new government of the day, as the Mother of the House has just said, faces a very difficult task, clearing up the mess it has inherited. We on these benches will hold the government to account.
We are the new kids on the block. We have no experience in this Parliament whatsoever, even though some of us have tried many times over the years previously to get here.
What's it been like sitting in that chamber on the other side?
Yeah, of course, it's a whole new experience, and getting to know so many new people, a lot of new names to learn. It does sort of bring home just how big the Labour majority is and what a job we've got to do to hold them to account effectively as the new opposition.
Labour MP Peter Prinsley, who's a surgeon, turned up for his first day and bumped into one of his former patients, a doorkeeper in the Commons. He's quite surprised to be here after winning one of the safest Tory seats in the country.
You do realise that some people spend a lifetime trying to get into this place as an MP?
No, I do realise that, and I understand that I'm extremely lucky to have managed to get to be an MP really in 1 month flat. But I shall do my very best.
The political arguments will start again soon, but first all MPs, old and new, have to swear their oath of allegiance to the Crown. And then the work begins. Vicky Young, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, after a whirlwind tour of the UK, the Prime Minister is now on his way to Washington for the annual NATO summit. Our political editor, Chris Mason, is travelling with him and sent us this update.
Hello from a rather soggy airfield. Quite a moment this for Sir Keir Starmer as he prepares to get on board the Prime Ministerial plane and head to Washington. He'll have a chance to visit the White House to meet President Biden and also introduce himself to lots of other world leaders at this NATO summit. And all of this less than a week on from the general election. Obviously at a NATO summit, a gathering of the Defence Alliance, a real focus on security, Labour have promised that they want to spend 2.5% of national income on defence, but crucially they've not put a time frame on it, a deadline on it, which means there is a question about whether it is ever achieved. So lots to discuss about defence and quite a moment for the new Prime Minister.
Chris Mason there before they took off for Washington. Well, the Prime Minister will, as Chris says, have face-to-face talks with President Biden while he's in Washington. All eyes will be on the 81-year-old president during the summit amid growing pressure on him to step aside after a disastrous TV debate with Donald Trump last month. Here's our North America correspondent, John Sudworth.
The White House defends President Biden's health as he remains defiant about staying in this race.
The questions won't go away. The news shows once again this morning leading on the story of President Biden's age. On Capitol Hill, Democrats have been meeting behind closed doors to discuss strategy. A handful have called for the president to drop out, but party leaders are so far backing his defiant refusal to quit. In New York, one of the bluest of blue Democrat states, voters accept that the heat is on the president. But in a contest with Donald Trump, for many, the choice is clear.
The biggest thing is to not let someone who does not appear to care about the country at all get in power.
I think in an ideal world, he wouldn't be the president, yeah. But, we might not have an ideal world.
But business leaders and donors are stepping up their pressure. An open letter published by one group of executives now has more than 400 signatories.
We have respectfully asked President Biden to pass the torch to a new generation of leaders. We believe that there are multiple leaders in the Democratic Party who would be well equipped to be our president and effectively make the case about the risks that Donald Trump and that the current Republican Party presents.
And Mr. Biden will be under greater scrutiny this week as he welcomes NATO members to Washington. Questions about Mr. Biden's fitness for domestic office also apply to his leadership on the global stage. And with world leaders arriving here in America for a NATO summit that's meant to be about sending a message of international resolve and solidarity, it is now that sense of uncertainty over America's future political direction that looms largest. Despite his calls for the speculation to end, every word and step are being more closely watched than ever. John Sudworth, BBC News, New York.
Dyson has announced plans to cut around 1,000 jobs in the UK, more than a quarter of its workforce here, in a major restructure to protect its future. The firm, known for innovative household appliances, including vacuum cleaners, hairdryers and fans, is based in Wiltshire with offices in London and Bristol. Our business editor, Simon Jack, is with me. This is a successful company. What's happened?
Yeah, this is an unprecedented cull, 1,000 out of a 3,500 strong workforce. They've got 14,000 around the world. It remains to be seen what the cull looks like elsewhere, but they've started here. The company's saying this is the kind of thing that a company like this needs to do if it's going to stay agile, entrepreneurial and competitive in a very tough market. When you talk to people in the industry, they say it is competitive. The people like Shark Ninja, who specialise in things like air fryers and cordless vacuum cleaners and hairdryers, are eating into Dyson's market share. I've just got off the phone to an employee who got his redundancy notice today. The company says it's proposals. This person said it doesn't seem like a proposal to me, and saying that the fear is that whole teams are being moved out to, the Brains Trust was meant to be here, the manufacturing done in Philippines and Malaysia, but whole teams of designers are also moving out there. Should be said, very brand new chief executive has just come on, called Hanu Kerner. He's been there a couple of months, so this feels like a shake-up from the new guy. But James Dyson, of course, he signs everything off, and he has in the past talked about woeful policies in the UK, high corporation tax, and he wants to invest in more modern, forward-looking economies. But we'll keep an eye out what happens to the rest of the Dyson empire in the coming weeks.
Simon Jack, thank you. A drunk driver has been jailed for 17 years after ploughing into a family car at a speed of more than 140 miles an hour in County Durham, killing a woman and her baby nephew instantly. Daryl Anderson was taking pictures of himself whilst driving when he crashed into the car on the A1. Fiona Trott reports from Durham Crown Court.
Drunk and dangerous.
I've just got back off holiday.
A driver who'd caused 2 deaths just minutes before.
I had a little bit to drink on plane.
Daryl Anderson had more than that. Just listen to what the breathalyser revealed.
What's that in?
So I'd have to feel you've gone 95.
What's
95. The legal limit's 35.
Is it?
Yeah.
An empty vodka bottle was found nearby. He'd been using WhatsApp on his phone and had even taken a photograph of his speedometer. 8-month-old Zachary Blades was killed. His aunt, Carleen Warner, also died. This was an emotional hearing. Relatives called Anderson a coward and said, "Look at me," when they gave their impact statement. And it had an impact. Anderson himself was crying. Zachary's mum, who was Carleen's sister and was driving that night, said she'd fight for Anderson and people like him to be disqualified from driving for life.
We were never going to be happy with our sentence today because it doesn't make up for what we've lost. But if we can stop that next person, make them think twice, then we've done some good, and Carleen and Zach's lives were more than that.
I drove into the back of another car, yeah, but I'm not a bad person.
The family of those he killed disagree. Fiona Trott, BBC News, Durham.
Junior doctors in England say they've had a positive first meeting with the new Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, about their long-running pay dispute. The British Medical Association wants a 35% pay rise to make up for what it says is 15 years of below-inflation pay increases. Our health editor, Hugh Pym, is at the Department of Health. Is a breakthrough possible?
Well, Sophie, I think it's possible, but these are very early days. That being said, I've been covering this dispute for 16 months or more now, going right back to the first round of strikes in March last year, and there have been various sets of talks which have ended acrimoniously with one side or the other blaming the other side for it all falling apart. Today we had the junior doctor representatives at the British Medical Association coming out of the door behind me here at the Department of Health and saying it had been positive, the approach had been collaborative. Their key demand is that restoration, as they call it, of the value of their pay packets wiped out by inflation going right back to 2008, and so wanting a multi-year pay deal. And they feel that that was not ruled out in any shape or form. Government sources, though, say that there was nothing specific said about numbers or about the specifics of a multi-year pay deal. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, said it wasn't going to be easy, but he did say that he felt that hard work could be done by both sides to find a way through this. Anyway, we'll wait and see what happens at the next set of talks right here next week.
Thank you. The time is 6:15, our top story this evening.
Order, order.
MPs return to Parliament for the first time since the general election as Sir Keir Starmer addresses the Commons as Prime Minister. And thrilling the crowds at Wimbledon, defending champion Carlos Alcaraz takes on Tommy Paul in the men's quarter-finals.
On Look North, after the national news, a soft play centre denies claims by parents of children with Down syndrome that they're discriminating against them. And Lost Voice Guy, inspiring youngsters to follow his lead and take part in the Great North Run.
So a big night for England tomorrow. Their Euros semi-final against the Netherlands in Germany. The manager, Gareth Southgate, has just been speaking and said his side are a special group who have bonded during the tournament. Tonight, Spain will battle France in their semi for a place in Sunday's final. Our sports editor, Dan Roan, is in Dortmund for us now. Dan.
Sophie, England have not found these Euros easy. They've had to come back from behind in each of their 2 knockout matches here in Germany so far. But here in Dortmund, they now realise that they stand on the brink of history. Gareth Southgate's men have an opportunity to become the first England men's team ever to win a semi-final at a major tournament overseas. And as Andy Swiss now reports, they'll have plenty of support in town ahead of a blockbuster clash against the Netherlands.
The trolley dash to Dortmund is underway. England fans arrive to sweltering skies and soaring hopes. Whatever it took, they made it.
Just got here about 20 minutes ago. My missus don't know I'm here, so don't put it on TV if you can help it.
Oh my gosh, so it's the stuff of dreams. I'm here with my 16-year-old son, who's just finished his GCSEs, so this is our summer holiday.
I mean, how confident are you feeling?
I'd like a 2-1 me, you know, I'm a simple guy. Got 1 pair of underpants left. And either way, we're staying till the end. Happy days, come on!
Well, here in Dortmund, they've laid this 2-mile-long green carpet to lead fans from here in the city centre out to the stadium. And England supporters will be hoping this is their path to victory. The players trained for a final time at their base in Blankenheim before they face the Netherlands and their toughest test so far.
From a team point of view, we know what we're trying to achieve. We set out from the start what we've been trying to achieve, and you know, we're close to doing that. We have a really important game tomorrow night, a really tough game, which we need to be ready for, and yeah, we've prepared for that.
At Kyiv High School, where the pride is plain to see, and he still holds the school long jump record.
Quite emotional at times when you see him go on and do things like he did on the weekend when he scored the goal. There was a tear in my eye, I have to admit. But no,
the emotions could be flowing again. England will be hoping their best here is still yet to come. Andy Swiss, BBC News, Dortmund.
The Dutch began this tournament slowly, but as time's gone on, they've gathered momentum and they have players with plenty of Premier League experience to call upon. They represent formidable opposition for England. And indeed, for the first time, Gareth Southgate's side will be outnumbered when it comes to supporters. The Dutch are expected to have the majority of the 62,000 seats at this stadium. Nonetheless, having shown moments of individual brilliance and plenty of resilience over recent weeks, England, I think, will believe that they can prevail and go all the way to the big one in Berlin on Sunday.
Dan Roan, thank you. A court in Moscow has issued an arrest warrant for Yulia Navalnaya, the wife of the late Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny, who's a prominent critic of Vladimir Putin. Russian authorities claimed Alexei Navalny died in February after failing to regain consciousness when he took a short walk at the Siberian penal colony where he was being held. Yulia Navalnaya, who's now living abroad, has been accused of participating in an extremist group. She could be arrested if she returns to Russia. The United Nations says it is highly likely that yesterday's strike on a children's hospital in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, was a direct hit from a Russian missile. At least 38 people died and around 190 people were wounded in attacks across the country. Moscow has denied targeting civilian sites. President Zelensky, who's in Washington for today's NATO summit, says Moscow must be held accountable. Our Ukraine correspondent James Waterhouse has been speaking to Ukrainians who were affected by the attack. You may find some of the images in his report upsetting.
Oh my God, she says. I don't know whose hand that is. I don't know if my Solomia is alive. The frantic seconds of a mother looking for her child. A Russian missile had just hit the hospital where her daughter had been receiving dialysis. After a relative eternity, she finds her alive, with a few scratches. After being reunited, we meet them at the hospital Solomia was transferred to, where they return to those haunting moments.
I told my husband on the phone, I don't know if I'll survive and if Solomia is alive. I had debris falling on me in the basement, and my child was upstairs on the second floor. I didn't know what was happening to her. It seemed we'd be buried alive.
I fainted. When I opened my eyes, I saw ceiling right next to my face. I was praying my mother was alive.
It's a view you wouldn't have seen yesterday. For a Ukrainian emergency worker, demolition is firmly part of the job description. Kyiv has strongly rejected Moscow's claim this was caused by a Ukrainian air defence missile, saying it has evidence it was Russian and deliberately launched.
This attack has posed difficult questions for Ukraine. Several cruise missiles hit their targets in the centre of the city, and as far as Kyiv is concerned, the need for air defences has never been greater. Missiles do terrorise, but thus far they haven't weakened Ukrainian resolve. But if the risk to life increases, that will only impact morale.
Valentina, a nurse, was working here when the attack happened. She tells us some of the hospital's 600 or so patients now can't access critical care.
Here we help children with complicated diseases. It's a horror for Ukraine and for everyone. We ask the world to stop this war, to stop this nightmare, for our children not to suffer.
Large-scale missile strikes are common in wartime Ukraine, but this one has especially caused political shockwaves because of who and what it hit. Kyiv wants to convert this Western shock into more military support. James Waterhouse, BBC News, Kyiv.
Here, police investigating a fatal arson attack have released CCTV footage showing the moment that the house in Wolverhampton was set alight. A 26-year-old man died in hospital after the attack. West Midlands Police have released the images as they renew an appeal for anyone with information to come forward. You may find some of the images in Navtej Johal's report, Distressing from the Start.
Plascombe Road in Wolverhampton 2 weeks ago, just after 1 o'clock in the morning. A figure dressed in dark clothing approaches a house where a family are sleeping. Listen to the banging on the window. As the glass shatters and the pane is pulled away, they put something through it. Within seconds, the home goes up in flames and they run away. This incident left Akashdeep Singh, a 26-year-old man, dead, and 4 others injured. The CCTV footage and this photo from inside the house have been released by West Midlands Police to encourage people to come forward with information.
It's distressing because it is very unusual. This is a very unusual event. Certainly this is why we need to bring the people responsible for this to justice as quickly as we can.
2 weeks on, and this is what the house looks like now. The family have described the victim as a loving son, and 2 of them remain in hospital. The hope is that soon they will get some answers about who is responsible for what happened here. Navtesh Johal, BBC News, Wolverhampton.
Football, and the former Wales captain Craig Bellamy has been appointed as the new coach of the national team. He said it was the proudest moment of his career and his ultimate dream job. Bellamy takes over from Robert Page, who was sacked in June after Wales failed to make it to the Euros. Another big name falls at Wimbledon as the world number one, Yannick Sinner, has been knocked out at the quarter-final stage on a day once again disrupted by rain. Laura Scott reports from the All England club.
Summer, hey? You might question their sense, but you can't fault their spirit.
I just think you can't get any more British than this, can you?
It's quintessential, really. You've brought your bin bag with you.
I know, you've got to be prepared for all the weather.
Under the roof, the previously unknown qualifier Lulu's sun shone, but then faded as Donna Vekic fought her way to the final four. But was the roof creating a mugginess that was hard to play in? From one player who looked out on their feet to another who was out of sorts, the world number one Yannick Sinner had to leave centre court. He dug deep to push through 5 sets, but a spot in the semi-finals went the way of the fiendish 5th seed Daniel Medvedev.
At one moment I could feel that he doesn't move that well, so it's always tricky because you want to play more points to make him suffer a little bit more, and in a good way, and at the same time you know that he at one point is going to say, okay, I cannot run anymore, so I'm going to go full power, and that's what he did.
Perhaps it was the rain outside, or perhaps it was the calibre of the contest, but the crowd packed in to see the defending champion Carlos Alcaraz going toe-to-toe with Tommy Paul. A barnstorming, breathtaking battle that was only 2 sets in after nearly 2 hours.
And he's picked him up.
Well, it's certainly been one of those days where a ticket to the 2 main courts has been highly sought after. And that's not just because they're in the dry, although that definitely helps. The crowds have really been treated to some tussles out there, and I can tell you that Carlos Alcaraz has taken the 3rd set. He'll be hoping to book a spot in the final 4 in time to watch Spain in the semi-finals of the Euros.
Laura, thank you. Oh, all this rain, it may only be 9 days into July, but some parts of the UK have already seen more than a month's worth of rain. It's washing out Wimbledon, as you just saw, and ruining summer holidays right across the UK. Well, Danny Savage joins us from beside the sea in Scarborough. You don't need an umbrella, but that's not looking great.
Yeah, well, Sophie, earlier today you needed 2 waterproof jackets and the over trousers on to keep the rain out. It has got better as the day went on, and things are improving out there. There was even a couple of people swimming earlier on, and they got out pretty sharpish. The lifeboat's now on exercise behind me, but I think most people we've talked to today think that so far summer 2024 has failed to load.
High summer in Britain. Sunny Scarborough, Scarbados, words not associated with today. Just where has summer gone?
It's hiding out there somewhere behind all them horrible rainy clouds.
Do you think it will come back?
Of course it will.
It's just crazy, but it's Britain. Nothing else for it.
It's just one of those things. It's the British summer, yes?
It definitely is British summer. Just have to grin and bear it and get on with it.
You just get used to it, don't you? It's part of the British weather. You get 4 seasons in one day.
And not the right one today.
That's right.
So here we are in the 2nd week of July. In some parts of the UK, like Scotland, the school holidays have already started. Here in Yorkshire, they are imminent.
It's not just the mood that's been dampened. For seafront businesses, long wet summer days are damaging economically.
You rely on summer to, make your money to last through the winter, and the winters are really long. And when you get a day like this, days like winter, it's frustrating, yeah.
On days like these, the bathing flags seem like the very definition of optimism. The rest of summer can't really be like this, can it? Danny Savage, BBC News, Scarborough.
I have the perfect person to ask that to right now, Thomas.
Sophie, what can I say? It's been disappointing.
More than, yeah.
Oh, it really is not good, folks. I'm going to show you the forecast now for the next few days. Look at the jet stream. Here it is. It's to the south of us. When the jet stream is to the south of us, colder air comes in from the north. And the jet stream for the next few days is way to the south of us, and it's also pushing in weather systems. So what do we need for things to warm up? We need the jet stream to be to the north of us. So yes, some of us will like this warm air coming in from the south, but you will not like it when you read this here, end of July. I shall see myself out now. No, we've still got time for a more detailed forecast. Again, this is the rainfall that we're going to see over the next few days, so pretty much everybody gets a good dose of rain. Some areas will see a lot. Scotland actually over the next 24 hours could see as much as 50, 60, even 90 millimetres of rain across Grampian. And this evening, that weather front's moving northward. So yes, it is improving in the south. It's improving a little bit in Scarborough, even though it didn't look like it. But it's muggy out there. We felt it at Wimbledon. We're going to feel it tonight. Look at that, 14, 15 degrees there in northwestern England and in Hull. In the south, widely the mid-teens overnight. It's really humid air. Now, tomorrow, I'm pleased to say, the weather will be better in the south. After some showers in the morning, there'll be sunshine around. It is looking better for Wimbledon, a much lower risk of rain. It's not going to be those gloomy skies we had, but I think in the north of Scotland, it's looking pretty wet. Those temperatures a little bit higher tomorrow because there's more sunshine coming through. And then towards the end of the week, this Azores high is trying to build in, but when we're on the edge of it, the air comes in from the north, so these are chilly northerly winds. I mean, there'll be some big temperature contrasts, I think. Look at that, only 13 for our friends in Lowick, 14 in Aberdeen. This is pleasant, around 23 in London, giving a little bit of sunshine. And then the outlook, there you go. Not particularly warm, and it's a mixed bag. Back to you.
Thomas, thank you. It's time now to join our colleagues for the news where you are. Goodbye.
Thank you, Sophie. Well,